Okay, so we're gonna end this horror-themed month, or Halloween-themed month, or whatever you want to call it, with a pretty obvious choice. It's another one of those ones that you can chalk up to the whole, I'm basically doing this because I'm not really quite sure how I haven't done it before. So, and obviously these are basically the Disney staples of this holiday, more or less, so I think it pretty much speaks for himself why they'd be put together. And I think we're going to start with the significantly more, I guess, pop culturally relevant one with Hocus Pocus. And, I don't know what it is about Kenny Ortega, the director, but he had done this right after he'd done Newsies. And when you look at those two, it's like this guy seems to have a knack for making movies that just the critics absolutely, completely, and totally rip apart. That ultimately find a fan base, even if it's many years down the road. And not only that, but a very, very passionate, big fan base at that. So, obviously, it is... I mean, when we start off, sure, we meet these witches who need the souls of children in order to remain younger, and then 300 years after they're all three hanged for the murder of a child, but potentially two, because Thackeray is missing to them anyway, and then cut to 300 years later, and the house is investigated by a few teenagers. You've got some nice person in the 300 years apparently went in and installed sprinklers and left a vacuum, but that's beside the point. And then they completely unleash the hell that is these three witches, and we get to do it all over again on Halloween night. So there's some stuff in there that kind of stops to make you think, oh, this is definitely a Disney movie, and then some of it's like, holy shit, this is a Disney movie, really, and a beloved one at that. So I gotta say right up front that this might be a movie that if some people don't like it, like for instance those critics back in 1993, want to come out and say the only reason people like this movie is nostalgia or some bullshit like that, or it's like, you overlook the flaws because of nostalgia and all that. The great thing about this is you can't say that to me, because the first time I saw this movie, I was like, I was late when I saw this. I was like 20 or 21 the first time I saw this, and I've maybe seen it a few times since then. I'm going to try to make it a bit more of an annual thing. This is a relatively new copy that I have. Yeah, so what I'm about to say is based on that, not based on that whatsoever. So, when you look at it from the very start, though, it's pretty easy to see. Mainly I mean, you can throw the word iconic around quite a bit, and it doesn't always earn it, but I think it's very easy to say that you have these three iconic characters, particularly this Bette Midler performance, where it's not only is it just the character, but her appearance just feels iconic and just instantly recognizable, and it's a Halloween costume you've seen for years down the road, and you will continue to as it goes on. And she actually did, I think it was today even, I saw some article where she was explaining that she saw the movie again for like the first time since the 90s, and was talking about how pleased she was of how much it holds up, not just the fan base it's gotten, but how her own opinion on it is still very, very positive, and how it was able to, like, and she was basically attracted to the whole physical comedy of it, and being able to do, just go really, really over the top in, like, the biggest way possible. It's like you think about being big on the stage, and it's like even beyond that is where this performance lies. And it pretty much gives you the opportunity to do whatever you want. So you have, and it's also kind of really nice that when you look back at those old reviews, they basically say, like, it was a waste of her talent and they weren't using her in the right way or something, and then to hear her say, like, how pleased she is with what it is now and what she was doing in it, just makes it better. And then there's just even, like, not even if she's just doing the whole big thing, but she can just say one line, and like within the context and everything, it's just perfectly delivered. Like at the beginning, when she's like in complete denial of being considered ugly, despite her appearance, her very obvious appearance, and when Thackeray calls he calls her a hag, but then she says, "Sisters, did you hear what he called you?" and she's just just completely blocking it out. Or the one of my favorite things also is when sometimes she has just one, she can deliver one word that is just so unexpectedly hilarious. Like when they are leaving the house and the bullies stop them and say like, "Why is it only the ugly chicks that are out this time of night?" And she does that slow turn around, and because we know this character, we think she's gonna say ugly, but for some reason she says chicks instead. Just little moments like that where she can just say one word and make it that bit hit that hard. Just really works. And of course, she's backed up by Sarah Jessica Parker, who just just in this really great way plays the lovable idiot more or less. Though it is worth noting that at the risk of sounding crass, it's always been a bit odd to me that they're considered, like, really ugly, and, like, that's basically the whole running joke, is that everybody thinks they're so ugly. And it's a little odd for the Sarah character scenario, because it's like, this is Sarah Jessica Parker at, like, her hottest. So I've never quite understood the... And throughout, you know, like, you have characters like the bus driver who are clearly attracted to her, and it's like, I've never quite known how to... what they're doing with that. But then you also have Kathy and the Gemma here, who's kind of got the thankless task of, it doesn't really feel like she has as much of a notable personality as the other two. Because you've got, you know, Sarah Jessica Parker being the lovable witty, and you've got Bette Midler doing the really over-the-top, evil, cackly thing. And Kathy and Gemma's job just seems to be like, she's basically got to be somewhere in between those two personalities and have a little bit of both of them and just sort of be in the middle. She certainly has her moments, for sure, and she does what she can, but I feel like she's kind of got the most thankless role of the three of them, unfortunately. But all three of them together as a trio are just perfect, so it's fine. So with that in mind, you realize how strong they are as our three leads, so the question now lies on the quality of the kids in it. So we've got our lead character, but the problem here is that I'm sort of just not really sure how to take this guy, especially with his intro being so confusing with the rest of his character. Because he's like, you know, the new guy, and he's like a target for bullies, and he's very sort of, he seems sort of passive in regards to like how easily you can walk up to him and just like take his shoes, for instance. But the first time we see him is in the classroom, when he seems like he's got a totally different personality, when he's sort of like being the, like the rebel stud type, where like he walks up to Vanessa Shaw and he's like, hey, you know, if Jimi Hendrix drops by, here's my number. And you think he's that guy, but then, like, he's never really that guy again. In fact, he's, like, the opposite of that guy. So it's like, I don't know where, like, this confidence came from that he had to do that, but he pretty much never has it again. So, and I do think also that it suffers that, you've got the annoying little sister character with Thora Birch, which, once again, I'm not quite sure how to take, because she's probably the most likable character in the movie. If you take out the different kind of likable the witches are. Where Thora Birch was always, like, really super talented and just can really, like, especially in Now and Then, she can just play these characters that just, like, really just stick out in your mind. And here she even takes the annoying little sister cliche and makes something out of it. And even the way their kind of brother-sister relationship goes back and forth too, plays really realistically. Like when she wants to go home and she's crying and all that, and then he like makes her laugh or whatever. And then they do like the nod at each other when they go up to Allison's house. But then like just as quickly she can go from being the nice lovable little sister to the saboteur. Like when he's talking to Allison at her house, and she just starts making the comments about her tits and what he thinks of that. And it's like, it does feel very sibling-like that she can be like trustworthy one minute and then I'm gonna completely cock-block you the next. So I do like that, particularly between the two of them, and also there's the whole idea of oh shit, where was I going to go with this? I'll have to come back to it. It will come back to me. So the next thing I do want to talk about, though, is I was talking about the physicality that Bette Midler was talking about that she liked doing so much. And when you think of physicality, there's somebody else that you immediately think of. And that's the fact that Doug Jones is in this movie, playing Billy Wooderson. And what's really great about this is you look at Doug Jones's previous roles, like, or I guess after they'd be after this, but there are other roles we know him for, like Abe Sapien or the fish guy in The Shape of Water, just a number of these things. But most of them are like serious movies or horror movies or anything like that. It's really cool to get to see him go all out on that Doug Jones physicality that he has, but in like a comedic fashion. Whether it be the way he can throw himself around or the way he's just sort of dismissive of Bette Midler all the time, like I think she calls him a maggot museum at some point, and just that very over-the-top way he has of moving his body and expressing himself, which goes even more into the fact that he's got his lips sewn shut, so he has to use his body to communicate even more than usual. So I really love watching him do that here. And then there's even the moment where he apparently went like full-on method, where when he cuts his mouth open and the moths fly out. Yeah, I apparently read somewhere those are real moths. So that's admirable as well. And then you've got, the characters that are kind of like, yeah, of course they're here, like the bullies, for instance. But there is something, a little funnier than usual about the bullies here, like the way they're almost, and I know it's like a huge cliche, but the way it sort of plays up their mean qualities, but their ineptitude, like simultaneously, in equal parts. Like the introduction to the second dude, who insists for some inexplicable reason to be called Ice, and he is so committed to this new nickname he's probably given himself. He's got it shaved into the back of his head, which is hilarious. And there's just those moments like when they're mocking trick-or-treating and all that. It's like, they are kind of the cliche characters, but if they're funny enough, that feels refreshing and doesn't feel like... They're characters that you can hate, but not, like, to a serious or extreme degree. They're just enough that you like seeing them get a bit of a sort of comeuppance also. So that's a nice middle ground that they found for them. And throughout, there are these characters that are just really pretty much unrelated to anything, yet somehow are just these little standout scenes that work, like the fake cop that they mistake for a real one. Just scenes like that have nothing to do with anything work on their own also. So the main thing to look at when you look back on this is like it's really the way we're viewing what it is we're looking at. Because it's like the main characters in this movie that you see, like women and girls dressing up as for Halloween and saying the quotes and watching the movie over and over again and all that, and just really growing to love these characters, you almost, at least for a little bit, maybe if you get sucked into it enough, you might almost forget they're the villains. But not only that, but they're pretty damn villainy at that. Their whole plan is to, like, hypnotize children to get them to come to their house so that they can take their souls, and we learn very early on that when they take your soul, like, it's not really some Disney movie cutaway or anything like that. You, like, die. The opening scene in this movie, is them killing a little girl and getting hung for it. Executed for it. and they kind of show a lot more of this than you think. Apparently there's, like, a heavily edited UK version or something that takes out some of the more extreme stuff, like, seeing them hang, or seeing, Billy lose his head a couple of times, or the time that his fingers get cut off on the manhole cover. And it's like, and when you look at this stuff, you sort of can't believe that this is some happy family Disney movie. It's like, I can only imagine a PG Disney movie being released now that has a couple of decapitations and fingers getting cut off, our main characters getting hanged and killing children. It's pretty extreme. I mean, yes, but that's the thing, though. That's the point I want to make, is I'm not saying this is some big, dark movie. I'm not, it's like those clickbait headlines you see where it's like, this is so much darker and twisted than you remember. It's not that. It's the fact that they play it up so upbeat and so, like, energetic, that it still feels like just, I don't know about, I was going to say family movie, but, I mean, the stuff is still, as upbeat as they play it and as much fun as they make it, it's still some pretty extreme moments, but, yeah, but that's the point, is the fact that they're able to make it fun like that, to where it might startle children, but there's probably nothing traumatizing. So, especially if it was more like, you know, in 1993 and all that, where things were, at least felt a little less sheltered. That may be a perspective thing, but, so, yeah, and the fact that they were able to just go for that without trying to, like, really tone it down or cut it down, is something you kind of really appreciate in retrospect. Especially when you see sort of how watered down a movie like this would be now. Like I mean, I could see them making this, but they'd probably, there'd have to be a line that they cross. The fact that there's a particular, I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say here, but, yeah, I could see them doing this, but it would be darker. Like, they wouldn't be able to do this kind of stuff in the fun way that this movie shows. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So, take that for what you will. And I know, like, a lot of the complaints were that, I think a couple of comments I saw were it's hammy to the extreme, and they consider this a setback. But I mean, like I said, you look at just the Bette Midler performance alone, and you're like, isn't that the appeal of it? Is that it's hammy to the extreme, and that it goes as far as it can with it, as over the top as possible? I think, to me anyway, that's what the appeal is. And it just really captures that sort of, you know, seasonal Halloween vibe. It's very easy to see how this was able to take off as this sort of thing. I saw it once referred to as the It's a Wonderful Life of Halloween, where you just have to, it's just always has to be there, and there's at least somewhere where it's just always running on a loop around this time of year, and that makes perfect sense. And not to mention, they even squeeze in a couple of songs. Obviously, Bette Midler gets a nice, big, show-stopping number, even throws in a gypsy reference. And then the Sarah Jessica Parker scene where she lures the children with her song, and it's like, there's something creepy but also, like, appropriately enchanting about it as well. I've always thought that was a really well done scene also, and it brings in that creepiness factor just a little bit while also being, yeah. So, that's pretty much what I have to say about this. I don't really know. I'm kind of stuttering through it because it's like I don't really know what I can say that probably hasn't already been said. Because I'm assuming, like I said, I was kind of late to this. I assume pretty much everything about it has probably been long since discussed by the time I got around to it, let alone many years after the fact that I'm doing this right now. So, but yeah, that's where I stand with it. And like I said, even without the factor of nostalgia, I can still like it as much as I do, which is quite a bit. So. And I am going to probably make it much more of an annual thing than I have up to this point, which means I'll get to know it better throughout the years also, so that'll be fun. As far as Halloweentown goes, well, we're already making references to, like I said, Hocus Pocus being the It's a Wonderful Life of Halloween and all that. Kind of staying in that vein, there is something that I really always liked about Halloweentown. And that is, I'll be honest, I think that Halloweentown peaks in the first 15 minutes. Like, I don't think it really reaches a certain quality about it, once they get to Halloweentown. And the reason I say that is because, and that might seem a bit odd, because it's like, they just hang around the house, and then Debbie Reynolds comes, there's a chicken, there's costumes, and then they go to Halloweentown. Seems like them getting to Halloweentown should be what the goal is here. But the thing that I love that Halloweentown does in these opening moments is how much it treats Halloween like Christmas, in like, many ways. Because you've got, Debbie Reynolds comes in, like, you know, really late at night, when somehow nobody seems to realize she's there. She brings gifts and presents and all that, just totally unnoticed, and almost like she's like the Santa Claus of Halloween or something. And then it gets to the point when she reads them a bedtime story. And it's like this whole thing of, you know, it's this sort of happy story about what Halloweentown is like and about the monsters and the ghouls and all that. But it's like, it basically feels, she might as well be reading 'Twas the Night Before Christmas to them, as, given the way they react to it, and the sort of, you know, grandmotherly vibe she tells this story. And then lastly, when the girl comes downstairs, after she's supposed to be in bed, and she sees something magical she's not supposed to, where she sees Debbie Reynolds turn the leftovers into an actual chicken and then back again, and hears them talking about it. And it's basically like a kid getting out of bed, coming downstairs, and seeing Santa Claus in the act. of leaving presents, and it's just the way it captures that and makes Halloween sort of gives it almost that same magical feel that Christmas has. It's something that I've always just sort of really liked about it, and the way they capture that. But yeah, but then we've also got the fact that it is a Disney Channel movie. It's not even, you can't even say it's like a Disney movie. It's a Disney Channel movie, which is, there's a difference. So you do have the same characters that you'd have. There are characters that you would see in like a Disney Channel show, where they have to fit like a certain sort of stereotype or character type or whatever. Where you've got the girl that feels like a weird outcast, and she's a teenage girl, a freshly teenage girl, she's 13, so she's going against what her mom says and trying to be rebellious and trying to go off and do her own thing and all that, and her mom Judith Hogue, the original April O'Neil, who does kind of do the motherly thing nicely also. But then you've also got, like, you know, the nerdy kid that says stuff like, oh, I'll take a nature documentary anytime, or the razor blades and the apples is just an urban myth, and, you know, this bag defies logic, shit like that. There's always that one character type in all the movies or shows like this. And it was, even at this particular time, it was, like, extremely tired and played out, and that kid has no particular, like, usually there'd be the moment where, like, maybe he comes around and all that, and I do, like, I mean, sometimes I do like the commitment they keep to the character, where it's like, after a while, he just doesn't give a shit when they're in Halloweentown, because he's like, I've just accepted this as a dream, so I'm just gonna roll with it. But still, I feel like they could have broken down the type just a little bit more, and made everything feel less generic with the kids. The youngest girl, I keep forgetting is even there. So it's like she shows up late, and then even after that, it's like she might as well not even be there. She opens the gate, she, like, does the frog thing, and that's about the extent of it, at least that I remember. If she did anything else, as I said, I probably forgot. So, and that's the problem too, is it's like, I mean, I do get, a complaint that I've heard before is that Halloweentown should be sort of like a bit of a darker place, how it's like, it's weird that you go to a place called Halloweentown and, like, the sun's always shining and everybody's smiling and shit. I do think that when you look at, like, the background setting and all that, like, without looking at the characters walking around and everything, it does seem like it's going more for, like, a fall setting as opposed to, like, you know, scary horror setting. And honestly, that makes perfect sense to me because of the story that she's reading to them at the beginning, where she's basically, the whole point is that Halloweentown is a happy place where everybody's, like, you know, not the scary thing you think they are. So I don't know, these people that, you know, think Halloweentown should have been darker, I don't really know if they saw the first part of the movie or not, but so I've always been fine with that. But it is the whole, like, once they get there, it does feel like that Halloweentown itself, like, when they were writing it, is like, there was, like, the one idea, and then they didn't really have much of anything to expand on that. There are things, like, here and there that are mentioned that sound like they'd be ideas if we, like, actually saw them as opposed to just hearing about them, and they sort of expanded on more, like, when the woman walks up and says that she's going to the headless shelter as opposed to the homeless shelter, and it's like that a place like that exists here. It seems like there should be something creative there, or when Calabar mentions something about a Styx River cruise, and it's like there's all these references that sound like cool and funny ideas to go along with this world, but it's all just very surface. It's like this one cheap set that they have that we barely branch out of, and so that's the thing too, is like, you would think they'd be more creative in the sense of, like, what the people look like. I mean, sure, they look like, I mean, maybe there's a bit of a charm to the fact that it's so clearly people in costumes. When you look around and, like, everything looks really cheap, they don't look like actual ghouls or anything like that. But it's like, maybe there's a charm to that because that's what Halloween is people walking around in costumes. I know they're supposed to actually be ghouls or witches or whatever, but this sort of kind of has that vibe of people in costumes. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what it really is anyway. But even so, it is like, for instance, it would be one of the, this should be one of those things where there's so much creativity and so much detail that you should be able to, like, keep looking in the background and see. It's like sort of something like, obviously with animation you can do anything, but to use an example, like Hotel Transylvania, when you watch those and you're like always looking in the background for all the details that they throw in or all the creativity that's not like right in the foreground, you don't really get that. It's like you see the people and like they got the big faces or whatever in here, but then you look outside and it's just like regular people walking around in costumes, and it's like you can just sense the cheapness of it, and like they didn't really go that far into expand on it. And I know it's like a Disney Channel movie, so they probably didn't have like some big ass budget, but at the same time it is like you can sort of see that budget coming through, like in scenes that should even feel like they're bigger or have a bigger impact, like when the two of them go flying. Should be like this sort of like Superman moment between Debbie Reynolds and this girl, but it's like it's so clearly like just that one green screen shot of them and just the blank sky behind them with nothing else. And it's like, well, that should have felt a bit more eventful than it was, but whatever. I mean, every now and then, actually maybe once, there's a scene that might feel like genuinely spooky. The first one that obviously comes to mind is the movie theater setting, where like everybody's like frozen and then he like comes out of the screen and like flies in. And that's sort of, you know, spooky in comparison to everything else, but yeah, overall, there's not really too much of that. But like I said, I'm more or less, you know, fine with that, and like I said, to go dark would like really go against the setup, where she sets it up as a happy place, but still, it's like, it just really doesn't feel like they had enough to really, you know, go into this concept, which is really weird that there's like, what is it, 4 of these? I know there's a second one that comes in this DVD, and then there's like 2 more, and I don't really remember them much at all, so, so there's that. And usually, it's like the movie's like 80 minutes, and usually by like the half-hour to 45-minute mark, I'm like tuning out, and I'm like struggling to concentrate on it because I kind of just don't care anymore. So that's kind of a bummer, but like I said, I do think that it's like, there are some people that don't give it enough credit, and, you know, the other people that just see it as this sort of seasonal thing. I can see where that comes from, but I do think Hocus Pocus sort of captures the vibe significantly better, and I mean, obviously they're going to have a bigger budget and all that, and bigger names and all that, but still, that's pretty much where I stand with this. So, yeah, so I guess the Versus is going to go back to normal now. I think I know what the next one's going to be, and it has... the fan bases for this and those movies are not going to cross whatsoever, so I'm not even going to mention what that is. And then we'll go into... I'm also starting a new segment as well, so which will be... when you're seeing this will be tomorrow that starts, so... so we have that to look forward to if you're into that. So until all that stuff, that's it.